Hi, good evening, everyone. We are meeting under different circumstances, obviously. It's nice to see you all's faces, even from a distance. Scrolling through, you can see just about everybody. I want to welcome to our last EDAC meeting of this school year. We do have a presentation tonight by Mr. Malloy. As you see on your agenda, and also just checking. Can everyone see the agenda that Mr. Edie put up? Yes. All right. So I can't see everyone's face all at once on my screen, so you have to give me a thumbs up or a verbal response for your acknowledgments, just so I know that you can see and hear. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight? Thank you. I see the thumbs up too.
I'm sorry, who was the first motion? The first motion? That was me.
Motion was from Luna.
Who was the first one, Mr. Quisenberry?
Luna?
Luna? And the second, Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting? Ms. Thomas?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, procedure says, can Ms. Thomas take attendance of those who are on the call?
Yes.
Making the motions and taking votes.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right. Ms. Causey? Mr. Burns?
Here.
Dr. Henry Nui? Ms. Reed? Dr. Mahad? Is that a no for Dr. Mahad? Mr. Quisenberry?
Present.
Mr. Blakely?
Present.
Lubna, Ms. Lubna? Here. Mr. Williams?
Present.
All right. Ms. Bright? Present. Ms. Gamus? Present. Ms. Laura? Present. Mr. Nate? Mr. Nate? Mr. Carl? Mr. Carl?
Present.
Mr. Carl present? I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, okay, gotcha. Thank you. Was there anyone that I missed that's on the line? I know Ms. Jordan said that she might be a little bit late. Ms. Jordan, are you on? Okay. Mr. Chair, that's all who I have in attendance.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move forward to the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, just a question. The committee would not mind. I'm not sure if we officially took a vote for agenda item 3. I wanted to establish that we did and who we had on the call. So if you'd be willing, Mr. Chairman, can you go back to item 3 to make sure we have an official vote for the record?
So all in favor of the approval of the agenda, please say aye.
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 All right. So it's carried. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Sean Williams, I move so.
Second. Second. All right, do we have a motion? So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? All right, so carried. Thank you very much. I think the dog disagreed. We're going to move to our presentation from Mr. Malloy. He is the coordinator for community engagement and strategic communication for the County School District. Mr. Malloy.
I'm ready.
All right, there he is. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you guys so much for having me here at your last meeting. I was hired, I want to say, maybe 2 weeks in to the quarantine, which put a little bit of a constraint on the physical engagement. But we've been trying to work as hard as we can in doing a lot of projects. I see some familiar faces. I think I saw Mr. Burns.
Yes, sir. How you doing, Adam?
It's great to see you. So, I see a lot of people that I've met in and around the district. So I'm really excited to share, hopefully, some very focused points about where I want to go and get your guys' recommendations as a team, since a lot of you guys are very important stakeholders with voices that, are extremely important for what we want to do as the district. And so I'll go ahead and get started. And some of the information we're going to pause and just get you guys the feedback as a group, and hopefully we can stay in touch, and I can at least be connected with you guys as we move forward. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see that the presentation there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my background was as an educator, and I worked for Mr. Burns, who was an assistant principal. I started at North Fort Myers High in 2006, 2007. My focus as a history teacher was using critical pedagogy as a framework, and taking a look at a lot of local history projects with a focus specifically on African American history. I put a picture up there of Mrs. Shoemaker. I had a chance to interview her through one of my history projects, and also develop some lessons with my kids a little bit later on, teaching. My research primarily as a graduate student has been related to student assignment plans. First, the history of integration in Lee County with specific focus on African American agency. And then demographic trends since the county was granted unitary status in 1999, and then the 4-year provisional from there. And so that really brought me into the community engagement position and applying for. I did a number of presentations at the board, not with the board, I'm sorry, with cabinet and leadership last summer related to the new proximity plan. And it was a goal of mine for that to be one major piece of what I wanted to do in terms of community engagement and making sure that stakeholders were connected with what the district was doing across the board. So moving forward, my major function is to coordinate and facilitate a community-based engagement program, and doing research on what other districts of similar size do. A lot of them, Boston and Denver, who have had notable success in terms of their community-based programs, they have an entire department. I'm a part of communications, as Mr. Edie mentioned, strategic communications. And I'm looking to hopefully develop and implement and maintain a lot of elements of a community-based engagement program. So I highlighted some of the things that I'm looking to do. And then next, I'm going to go into some of the strategic initiatives that I'm really looking to get your ideas about how to best connect with the important stakeholders for each one. So the first one I have is increased readiness for kindergarten. And then increasing the public awareness of the district brand, including the development and implementation of strategic community engagement plans. And then the last one, increasing business and community partnerships. Now, these are three that that connect pretty easily to the position. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, and then we'll pause for your guys' feedback on each one. So in terms of increasing pre-K programs and community partnerships, the number of children enrolled, community-based pre-K partners, I wanted to do a number of things, and currently we're developing and hopefully branding some of them, which we'll talk about in just a second. So first up is the creation of parent universities. This is similar to what's been done in Boston, creating parent university family learning workshops, and these can be tailored across regions. A little bit of my background is strategic mapping, and so mapping certain areas and finding out what community leaders, organizations can be used and leveraged to get the district's message out. So in terms of creating like a school district countdown to kindergarten, where you set up supporting your pre-K mathematician, your pre-K reader, and this would be done across the major languages that we support at the district, including Spanish and Haitian Creole. Another initiative that I'm really excited about, and which I think you guys, I want to get your thoughts on, is a faith-based initiative. And we modeled this a little bit off of what Orange County does, and where they partner with a faith-based organization, and they have an agreement with guidelines, and we have those documents that we've been preparing. But really recognizing, I think, the central role that faith-based organizations play in the school district, and for them to get involved in a variety of ways to impact student learning. And this, I think, is a great bridge and connector to community leaders, besides just district personnel getting information out, but also connecting with those faith-based organizations, and maybe a little bit more of a formal process in terms of not only documents, but in terms of the reciprocal relationship between both school district and faith-based organization. It's my hope and goal that not only can we increase the district pre-K centers, whether it's construction or remodel, but really taking a look at the community partners or the district preferred community partners. I thought that was an area that we could really expand upon. So as it relates to expanding kindergarten readiness, these were some of the ideas that I've been working on and hopefully implementing once we can really get out there. And actually, I wanted to share another piece here. So I will new share. Oh, perfect, right here. Okay, great. So I'm not a map expert by any means, but in my spare time for trying to take a look at Lee County and a little bit taking a look at it in segments. This is just an ArcGIS. Can you guys see that map?
Yes.
Okay. This is just a layer of GIS where it has the median household income, and then it also has layered on it. Faith-based organizations, and this can be done to not waste your time, not like it's a waste of time, but to specifically target certain areas and community organizations like faith-based organizations. So that's something that I've been working on, and I was talking with my supervisor, Mrs. Lancaster, today, and this is something that we're excited about and hopefully moving forward with in the upcoming weeks. Besides, the faith-based and the parent university, I have a few calls this week with Denver Public Schools regarding their parent institution, and that's going to help me, I think, really fill out these parent university learning workshops because it doesn't have to be just family learning workshops. It can be just getting family members engaged with whatever material we want to get out there and communicate to them. So I will stop the share now so that we can talk about some of the ideas that you guys have or questions that you may have, if that's okay, Mr. Chairperson.
That sounds good. Are there any questions for Mr. Malloy?
I have a couple.
All right, Mr. Burns.
Okay. Hey, Adam. How do you plan to lay out the connection between faith-based organizations and the school district, one? And is there a time frame that won't have time constraints for for this parent university for single parents who works and still has to take care of the kids at home, where they may be able to connect with this parent university? Or there's going to be different times that they may be able to connect with this parent university?
The idea, Mr. Burns, I think for the parent university is that they're offered really focused on when working parents could go. So that would be like on the weekends and in nighttime. So that would be I think the goal would be to hold optimal sessions for those parents that are working and providing for their children. And, as this develops, we would love to perhaps provide, better accommodations for parents to attend, whether that's, childcare or something along those lines. Now, in terms of the connection with faith-based organizations, since this particular approach to it, I think is still in the early phases, getting the documentation, and that's what we've really been working on, is what those guidelines are and what that commitment looks like from both the school district side and the faith-based organization side, because there are some abiding guidelines that we have to have, but we can't miss out on how important faith-based organizations are in the lives and well-being of our community.
I agree with you 100%.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
Yes. Mr. Malloy, I have a question on the faith-based organizations. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Due to the variety of the churches and the other religious organizations, what criteria are you going to use to see who we are going to partner with? And how are you going to ensure that we are not trying to indoctrinate our children with the different religious beliefs?
Yeah, initially when Mrs. Lancaster first kind of talked to me about the faith-based partnership, philosophically as an educator, I was like, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here? Where's the separation, and what do those guidelines look like? But when I was reading over what Orange County did to provide those guidelines, I thought that it really established and removed what my main concerns were about that connection, and then it really, I think, promoted the idea of the promotion of these role models through their faith, by their actions, and by their involvement in the school. Now, in terms of the actual review of the application and the approval of these groups, that's something that we're still in the formation of. And that's a great question, and something that I would like to bring in terms of these criteria have to be met to make sure and to ensure what we're doing is not violating, some sort of church and state issue. But Professor, we did meet, I think, at the African Network Gala. It's great to see you again, and that's something that I just wrote down, because while we have these kind of guidelines for the behavior of the organization, what's the accountability and measurement of making sure that that's actually happening?
And Adam, let me just make it clear that we have a very big variety of churches, and the criteria on selecting who to partner with is a very crucial issue. And I'm glad this is at the beginning. You have to be very careful on who you are partnering with. Not every church here and there, and what are the students going to get, and what is the basis of using the faith-based organizations rather than others. Yes, Adam, thank you for coming to the African Network. We'll partner with you too.
All right, additional questions for Mr. Malloy?
Sean Williams, Mr. Quisenberry.
How you doing, Mr.
Chair.
Williams?
Doing very well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Malloy, for presenting us today. The question I have is actually on these faith-based initiatives and making sure that we are equity and diversity, and we do have a very diverse population that attends our schools. And I want to make sure that we don't, when I think of faith-based, unfortunately, the main thing that comes to my mind is Christian. And I think that we do have Jewish Community Center. We also have a mosque that would be appropriate. And I think that I wouldn't want to conflate the faith-based with the education that they are getting. And making sure that when we do identify these partners in the community, that we make sure that we get a diverse group of partners involved, and not just all Catholic dioceses or just Baptist churches or just Lutheran services or any one concentration, that it be truly diversified and inclusive, that anyone would be able to attend those regardless of their faith.
Yeah, Mr. Williams, I can't tell you, I agree with you 100% on that. Studying the demographics of Lee County over the past 20 to 25 years, you see that we're missing out on what, like you mentioned, the diverse and equitable and inclusive partnerships. We can't think about community engagement from the 1984 perspective. We have to think about community engagement as it relates to the demographics that we currently have in Lee County. So your comment and your question and your concern is very well noted. My research on demographics and my mapping of those demographics is, I think, going to be extremely important in terms of focusing on those missing voices and those voices that are very difficult to capture. And that's something that I was talking about today. And it's very hard, I think, to reach those that have never really held positions of have not held positions of power as it comes to structures like the Lee County School District. But I think important strategic targeting, and then using what we know in terms of organizations and churches and community organizations to use that as leverage to try to capture some of those missing voices. But that I'm right on board 100%.
My question, is it more the district reaching out to these organizations, or are we requesting that those organizations reach out more to the district so that we can make that connection?
So we're still developing how exactly this is going to roll out. And I know churches are just reopening this week, and that was something that I wanted to create, almost like a community list of specific targets for organizations, not just faith-based, but faith-based included in certain areas, to let them know what we are offering as a district in this crisis, in terms of food resources, in terms of mental health or unemployment or those sorts of things. Besides just
Right.
links on the website, getting print documents into these particular hands and making sure that they were well aware of what the district was offering.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we weren't missing each other one way or the other. Like, we were missing groups reaching out, and then the groups didn't know that we were reaching out, and they missed that also. So just seeing that we had a process in place to reach a wide variety of groups, so that, like Mr. Williams said, we wouldn't be focused on one particular group, but we'd have access to all of them. They have access to us.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Govinda.
Thank you. Mr. Malloy, my question is that in light of what Sean just said about reaching out to different faith-based groups, my question is, what exactly is your expectation from these faith-based groups? What kind of engagement are you looking at?
I think to make faith-based organizations, just to build that bridge and that connection, recognizing the important role that they play in a lot of our kids and our community's life. I think there's no expectations besides making the connection. If they are looking for a way to get involved, that is setting up the guidelines and protocol for ways in which they can get involved, whether it's sponsoring a welcome back event, or whether that's participating in a reading program or mentoring. The options that we have currently, and once again, still in a very early phase, I think the initial step is that we need to connect those faith-based organizations. Community organizations serve a very important role in, central in our community. So the expectation is just, hey, this is us reaching out. Okay, we're not asking for anything except for, this is what the district is trying to do and trying to represent. But if you would like to get involved, right, and if you would like to perhaps, maybe get involved with a school on school campus, these are some things that you can do, and these are the guidelines. But if not, we are connected. We are mutually respecting each other's position in the community. We just wanted to. I think the expectation was just that we establish a better and more firm connection, and that if they did want to get involved, that we had a document kind of process of ways in which they could get involved. But it's still in an early phase, and I think that would be my expectation.
So have you started formulating a list yet? Do you have a list right now of the faith-based organizations?
I do not have. I have all of the faith-based organizations mapped.
When you say all, is it just churches, or does it include synagogues, mosques?
Yeah, also all of the ones that are currently registered as faith-based organizations per the Homeland Security. There is an open map file that I was able to overlay. So the current one that I have has all synagogues, mosques, churches that are registered through Homeland Security. When I first was doing it, I was doing it all by hand, and I was missing out on a lot of them. So luckily, I found a file that I thought was accurate and trustworthy per the government's registration.
Okay, thank you so much.
Additional questions for Mr. Malloy? All right, Mr. Malloy, looks like the questions have ended. We do appreciate your presentation and the great information. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you and you from us as we move forward in these different projects, as we get out to a good start.
Mr. Quisenberry, I'm not done yet.
Oh, he's got more. All right.
More. Oh man, that was like a leadoff hit right there. I've got a double and I've got a home run coming up next.
All right, please continue.
All right, so this one is specifically tailored to the proximity plan. And so this is where my background in researching student assignment plans designed to remedy resegregation trends, I think you guys will find it a little bit interesting. So in terms of increasing the public's awareness, I did a specific case study just on the proximity plan and what we're looking to roll out. Now, Mr. Edie and I have been involved with the early meetings with the consultant group, and so we're still they're still gathering the research to come up with the models. But we've been very vocal, not only about the history of student assignment and integration, and concerns about student isolation and resegregation, all of those things. So this is kind of my step process for what I would like to see happen, and hopefully what I'm implementing with the community with the proximity plan. So it just goes in like a step process from engagement infrastructure internally to then getting out into the community, and then listening campaigns with important stakeholders and groups, and then offering the community meaningful opportunities to participate, and then turning those community supporters into leaders and adopters. So this is also broken down a little bit more. This is what I would like to see happen as we move forward, from the consultant plan to the advisory groups to the department coordination, and then really getting out there in the community, from media outreach to workshops, community events, but then also forming consensus through listening campaigns and public forums and focus groups. And then in terms of offering meaningful opportunities to participate, the idea and concept of community partnership schools is, I think, where the district in us or me in community engagement, where I really need to get moving on, and that's creating more community partnership schools. So currently they're in the early planning phases of creating a community partnership school at Franklin Park. And that to me would be my utopia in terms of community engagement, is creating these 7 days a week schools that serve not only the needs of the kids, but also the needs of the surrounding community. And I did link some of the demographic stuff and I think never mind, that goes to my 60-day entry plan. Forget about that. Well, I do have it in here somewhere. But in terms of what we're going to do with the proximity plan, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts in terms of groups not to be missed, to be engaged with as it relates to the new proximity plan that is being developed in conjunction with Davis Demographics for the 22-23. I could be off. It seems like maybe it's a moving target, but no, it's that those conversations I think are very important. So in terms of just this general plan of how to go about getting this information about the new student assignment plan, I would like to talk with your guys' committee, with you guys, and see what your thoughts were about what do you think. Who are your groups that you definitely wouldn't want to miss in terms of getting this information out and connecting with parents and making sure that they know that this was done in a strategic way with the history of the county and its student assignment struggles in mind. So I'll stop sharing, and then we can get back as a group. In fact, I like it back as a group, I think, a lot more than the presentations. Kind of dull.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, Adam. I think I like your setup, the way you're going about it. But there are quite a number of organizations that are very focused on education, like the Haitian American Group, the African Network, and I think there'll be good partnerships to look into the aspects of leadership you have there. I also want to suggest that you look into partnering with the universities, particularly DCU has a lot of community engagement. We are all in this together, and there are quite a number of us who are really interested in community engagement. Then we thought is beneficial to all of us. That would be a good addition, working with the universities, working with African Network, Haitian American Group, NAACP, some other organizations too. Madam, did you get?
Yes, sir. Yes, Professor. Yeah, I got down, I think, all of them. Some of which I had as part of the try to attend as many meetings as I could as we start to get out there, just to make sure that that those groups know that there's a reciprocal bond between what we're trying to do. So yeah, I think I got down. I think I got down all of them.
Thank you.
Additional feedback from Mr. Malloy. Mr. Williams?
Chair Sean Williams. Mr. Malloy, question on the community schools, and those are going to be basically community-based schools, and you're looking at the first one being in Franklin Park. Is there any plans for like the Bonita Springs area as well, or? And I would like to also ask this question: what is resegregation? Because it doesn't sound very good.
Yes, unfortunately, Mr. Williams, it is not I wouldn't call it an overly positive trend. It's measuring demographic and student assignment after school district. Well, my research is mainly Southern school districts that had their court order lifted and were granted unitary status, and then measuring trends, student isolation and student exposure using quantitative measures. And one of the formulas that I've run for Lee County specifically is called the exposure index, and that's relative to the student pool that they are currently in. So the school district of Lee County split into 3 tri-zones, race neutral, starting in the 2005-2006 year. And since then, we have seen a large amount of resegregation as it relates to both exposure and evenness, like how many kids would have to move schools to get an even distribution per the student pool per zone. And that's a concern, and it doesn't match with the demographic shifts that we've seen. So you have the demographic changes throughout the school district, meaning that the district has become more diverse, particularly Hispanic students, and the growth in Hispanic students has been substantial. Also a decline in white students. So when it doesn't match the percentage of change per zone, and you have schools that have well over 90% non-white in areas that doesn't match the student pool, you have issues related to I guess, the negative consequences of student isolation. So yeah, sorry, that was a very long answer. That resegregation is yes, bad. That we were segregated, operated a biracial system until the Blaylock case eventually tore that down, and through a court monitored plan, integrated and achieved high levels of integration in the late 80s and early 90s. And then after unitary status in 1999, have since struggled with some issues related to student isolation. So to go back to your comment about Bonita Springs, currently, I think the Franklin Park is the only proposed community partnership school, but there is no reason why it couldn't be expanded with eager and ready community partners. So I think the tentative partners for Franklin Park are FGCU, Lee Health, and the United Way. And the agreements and the pledges and what's going to be provided there, I think, can set an example for what we want to see expanded. And that includes, that would include areas in Bonita Springs where we would really like to, provide these models. But yeah, we would have to, I think, get this one started and then use that as an example or as a model so that we can expand that.
And then just to follow up on that, so when you speak of proximity schools, are you talking about right now we have 5 zones and parents have the choice of 13 different elementary schools for their children, and we would like to probably whittle that down to probably 7 or 9 would be sufficient and a good start. But is that what you're talking about, proximity schools?
Yes, sir, and getting that new proximity plan. It was mentioned a decent amount in the workshop meeting today about how important proximity is in terms of alleviating transportation for other areas. And with the technology that Davis Demographics has, and with the group and committee focus on diversity and equity on the team, they can maybe get the choices down even fewer than that. If done strategically, if the new attendance zones, whether it's 24 or 25 new attendance zones with 2 to 4 choices, and don't quote me on that, they're still working out the models. The technology is there where they can do it strategic enough so that they are not isolating students and so that they are creating a very diverse group of new attendance zones. So I think that's my hope, and that's really what I would like to engage the community with is with this new GIS technology, they're able to map out in all the data on every single student. with diversity and equity in mind. So now they're in the data gathering phase, and they're going to come back with models. And then after those models and our team meets, and we get out to the community and see their thoughts, their concerns, then hopefully we're able to decide on something that is both able to reduce transportation or increase transportation efficiency, however you want to look at it, but also deal with issues related to student diversity.
All right, thank you. Additional questions on this topic for Ms. Malloy?
If I may, and I apologize that I was late. This is Debbie Jordan. Sean, we just started having meetings at Franklin Park for the community schools partnership, and Adam's right when he's talking about the partnerships that we have there. So on that, but it's definitely going to be a plus for the community. So once we get this one done, then we can move on and do more. So that's the goal.
Ms. Jordan,
Yes.
will that also help with transportation costs by doing something like that?
What Adam was speaking about regarding proximity schools, yes.
All right. Additional comments on this? All right. I don't see any hands, voices. All right. Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Let me double check. Is that all? Is there more?
Yes, I had a few more things, but this is getting late, and I kept my family outside in the rain so they couldn't come in. Best practice in regards to the parent institutions. And then they also very helpful with some things that we can do specifically in terms of getting our information to the Hispanic I'm sorry if I've talked too long. I was really excited to be a part of this room, and I just want you guys to know how much I am committed to diversity, equity, ensuring that student assignment plans are doing the right thing, but also making sure that our community members feel that the bond is reciprocal, that there is a mutual relationship between district and community. That's something that I think has come up a number of times on evaluations. Leadership, once things open up and I'm allowed to get out there and get to know people and build relationships and build upon already existing relationships, that my energy and my focus and my research will be something that we can continue to present to you guys and be proud of some of the products that we're putting out there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Malloy. Final request for any additional comments before we move on? Good.
Yes. Adam, this is very good, but I wanted to see whether there's a link between the diversity office and the components here in Bristol. The community engagement and the work being done in London in the diversity office and done in Bristol. Because I think that's very important piece for the student performance. Yes, thank you. I'll take the first one. Myself and Mr. White have been in conversation since he matriculated into the new role. So to answer your question succinctly, yes, sir. That's why I felt it was important for Adam to offer his presentation tonight. If you recall at the last meeting, Ms. Jordan did share that this position was coming on board. And I know that the committee had some conversation connected to communication and strategic engagement. So I think, Adam, this is your first formal committee presentation, if I'm not mistaken. So you guys are the first group for Mr. Malloy's presentation from the advisory committee level. But yes, sir, Adam and I are establishing working connections, and there's some additional plans as to how we can cross-pollinate things that we're doing and some things that he's part of his ongoing plan. What about the mentoring part? Sir, the mentoring part, are you working with that? Can you do specific when you say working with Dr. Yeah, if I go back a little bit, Crystal, we talked about this even in November last year at the conference here. We're working on some aspects of the mentoring program for our students, particularly the minority students. There's also programs that were in our office. And now that we have the community engagement office, I think there is a good link. When you're working well with these other organizations or faith-based, is the mentoring of students, which is very important. Yes. That's very important for me. Yes, sir. And Mr. Malloy talked about that earlier as a kicking off point for the faith-based conversation, Dr. Denui. He did mention specifically mentoring. So we have not had a formal sit down about that issue in particular, but we have been talking about community partner agreements and connections connected to how can community organizations further current working plans connected to mentoring and enrichment for students. So yes, sir. Thank you. That is a part of the conversation he and I are having. Thank you so much. Adam, well done. You did very well.
Good job, Adam. Good to see you.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Burns. You taught me well.
Mr. Williams, you have a question, sir?
I do. I just have a statement. Actually, when I look at the communications that you've had with other school districts, Charlotte, Denver, Boston, and Baltimore, I don't see that any of those are unitary systems. Have you reached out to any other unitary systems to get their input? Because, we are still under our court order or semi-court order monitored by the NAACP, and I just want to make sure that we are not resegregating in some material way.
No, Mr. Williams, that's a great that's a great point right there. I've reached out and had contact really with just Boston and Denver. You're right, neither of which have the unitary distinction and then the history of student assignment issues. So that will be something that will that I will get on tomorrow in terms of reaching out and seeing from a community engagement standpoint how that part of their history factors into their actions and how they roll out community engagement plans and such. So that's great. Thank you. I just typed that in there right there.
That's a good
All
question.
right. Yeah, I know that LA is a unitary system, if I remember correctly.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right. Any additional questions before we move on to our next topics? Additional comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Malloy. We appreciate the information. Once again, we look forward to getting more information from you and working together with you in the future as we build these programs that you've outlaid. You have another question, Mr. Malloy?
Do I, once we meet back in person, do I get to, will I get to come to a meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
You'll get the full experience.
That's the hope. I was hoping that the presentation would get me maybe one more invite back.
Yeah. You made the cut.
Yes.
All right. So as we heard Mr. Malloy's presentation, our next thing is to look at our recommendations for next year. Do we want to consider anything that we've heard tonight as part of an additional recommendation, or do we want to continue with the ones that we came up with at the last meeting?
The ones we came up with the last meeting, can you remind us or flash those up on the screen?
Yes, I can read them all for you. They were in the minutes from what Ms. Thomas sent out, but I'll read them out loud. Recommendation number 1 that we came up with was include diversity and inclusion questions on a survey that goes out to staff and students. And the second one was involve community leaders in the communication process with parents. We had taken our ideas from each table and whittled them down into 2 possible recommendations for the board, and that's where we left it. So my question is, do we want to look at adding in a 3rd recommendation or just proceed with what we've already come up with?
I recommend that we go with what we have.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Any other feedback on that? You can shake your head or thumbs up or anything. I just want to make sure that if we move forward, that we do have the consent of the board to move forward and everyone's opinions have been heard and recognized.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may interject for a second for a procedural moment. If the committee decides to go in that direction to officially adopt those recommendations to close out this academic school year, and I made the suggestion that someone offer that as an official motion so that Ms. Thomas can accurately connect that from a recommendation to now moving to your official recommendation as a vote.
Okay. I was just making sure we didn't want to add anything to those before we proceeded.
Excuse me, Dennis, do you all need to, or Jarrett, do we need to, with the survey about the questions, do we need to come up with what those questions are going to look like? Because right now it's just saying who would, about coming up with a survey for equity and diversity, but what are those questions that are wanting to be asked?
Ms. Jordan, I think based on what I heard the chair say, and I could be, please correct me, I think you all are just discussing the 2 recommendations related to communication and engagement. Is that correct, Mr. Chair? You referenced to those last 2 recommendations.
Right. As far as I understand, we do want to add some questions to the survey, but I think it'd be prudent for us to also have access to what is currently available, and before we make an official asking of a question. We did not put down any specific questions we wanted to have, but we had some limited information from previous surveys that were taken.
Okay,
so if I understand Ms. Jordan correctly, you're wanting us to talk about what specific questions we would add to the survey?
Well, I'm just making sure whenever I bring this back, that I know exactly what I'm bringing back as your recommendation.
Okay.
So I think, Ms. Jordan, the committee, of course, has the purview, but just from the staff perspective, where the committee landed was to talk further through those 2 recommendations that were tentatively discussed at the last meeting, and then to make some action on that. And that was part of the reason for me inviting suggesting that we invite Mr. Malloy tonight to reinforce that. That does not preclude the committee taking up the other points as you all see fit. And I think just for those 2, I was just asking to settle those 2 and make the recommendation. And feel free to go forward with the others, but I think for those 2, we didn't take a vote on that officially, if I recall correctly. You all want to have more conversation about those. So the survey part has not been in discussion yet in full depth, but I think the conversation for the communication piece were the 2 points that the chair mentioned that you want to go back to.
Right. Ms. Thomas, do you have the meeting meeting minutes from March 9th. And if you could put up page 2, it has the discussion board that we discussed and it has recommendations.
Yes.
She's pulling it up. I'm going to read them one more time so we can think about those. One was include diversity and inclusion questions on a survey that goes out to staff and students. And the second was to involve community leaders in the communication process with parents. I know for the the diversity and inclusion questions, there is a survey that goes out to students and parents and staff each year about the previous school year. And I think that was a survey that we've had presented to us before that we wanted to make sure diversity and inclusion questions were included on it. So they wanted to give us the temperature of where we were in the district with those particular issues. So I don't know that we came up with what those questions would be. We wanted the opportunity to review and add to it so those questions could be asked.
Right.
Am I remembering, understanding correctly what we discussed, what we were trying to accomplish?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Sean Williams.
Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
And also for the staff, because of the turnover issue, just to make sure that they felt included in discussions and in the process of education, as well as the diversity of the students and matching of the students with teachers.
Okay. I have a feeling that this year's survey is going to be a little different than years past. Some of the information, some of the things that we gather, some of the emotions and things that are expressed will be outside of what they normally would be with the situations that we're dealing with. So as far as the second one is concerned, involve community leaders in the communication process with parents. Mr. Malloy brought us some of those things tonight that I hope go in line with what we have as a vision going forward. Let's try and bridge that gap between the schools and the community organizations. If I remember correctly, we were trying to use the community organizations as a liaison to continue to spread the various informations we were trying to share with parents that we already tried to do through Messenger, through Peach Jar, through ParentLink. We were trying to use the community organizations and faith-based organizations as an additional avenue to get the information out to make sure we were reaching all of our stakeholders.
Communication channel. Yep.
Right. All right, looks like Ms. Thomas has put the 2 recommendations in the chat box. If you want to pull those up and be able to view them.
I would move to include diversity and inclusion questions on the survey that goes out to staff and students, and also involve community leaders in the communication process with parents.
All right, so it sounds like we have a motion to include the recommendations as they are written moving forward. Is there a...
Sean Williams, so made. Yep.
I second the motion.
There's a second to the motion from Mr. Byrne.
I second the motion.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, sounds like the motion is carried. Ms. Thomas, did you get everything you needed for the motion?
Yes, sir. The motion was made by Mr. Williams. Mr. Burns seconded the motion. All in favor?
All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to use these as our recommendations for EDAC going forward for this school year. As far as next school year is concerned, we will be in communication as far as the meetings and the next steps. As we all know, this situation is very fluid, and so we'll be staying on top of that and doing communications electronically until we find out what our next steps are. Update from our board liaison. Ms. Jordan, you're next on our list.
Thank you.
Well, even though school is not really in buildings and it's still going on, we're doing so much work. And like I said, I am so sorry that I was late. We were been on a Zoom meeting since 12:30 this afternoon for a workshop. And unfortunately, I tried really hard to stay on this committee, but I have had to move this year because I've already been on it for 2 years. So I am being moved to another committee as their liaison. But that doesn't mean I'm going away, because I'm going to be here and be engaged in every process of this and stay very much involved with the community schools, because I do sit on that board over there at Franklin Park, as well as working with Success Academy and working with Mr. Edie and Ms. Torres, because I really feel that it's imperative and really important to me to be engaged with the students and now Adam too. So I'm really excited that he's here. But all of you, I just think that all of you have been wonderful to work with, and I will always be there. So you have my emails, my phone number. You're welcome to call me anytime to share. And that's all I have to say right now.
We'll miss you, Debbie.
Thank you for your service, Ms. Jordan. You've been a valuable asset that we look forward to having. We are going to miss you also. Feel free to stay in communication and pop in when you can.
I will. I will.
All right, Mr. Edie, you're up next.
All right, Mr. Chairman, first of all, it's great to see everybody. I thank you all for coming and joining us in this virtual location, but it's good to see everybody and have a great conversation. I also would like to thank Mr. Malloy for coming out and having an opportunity to share some of his ideas and solicit feedback from the committee. And then also, I see off to the side, Jessica Duncan, our lead executive director for student services, who's representing tonight. So thank you to the district staff, and of course for LaTanya and also Crystal. Thank you all, and it's great to see everybody, and I hope all is well with you and your loved ones. So I'll keep it short, Mr. Chairman, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Edie. I do want to say, everyone, I appreciate all of your support this year, all of your volunteering, helping this community be as great as it is. We made large strides this year in what we're doing. I think we received numerous presentations that were valuable to furthering the cause of EDAC. And I hope that moving forward, we can continue to be a vital part of how Lee County School District grows, and using your valuable opinions and insight and your connections as a way to move this county and this state, this nation forward. So I want to say thank you. And I want to say have a great, safe summer.
Yes.
And take care of your loved ones.
Thank you, everyone.
Before we adjourn, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make sure on the agenda we still have a section for public comments. The policy was placed on the website that if the public had opportunity to weigh in on any of the agenda items or solicit and provide public comment. So I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Thomas as our recording secretary. Ms. Thomas, did you receive any public comments via email? Ms. Thomas, did you catch that?
Yes, sir, I caught it.
Did you receive any public comments via email?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay, so there were no public comments that were rendered for the meeting?
No.
Okay.
Are there any points for good of the order?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me thank everybody who has been here. But I wanted to remind everybody that if you are in your year 2, the time is up, that you can reapply. Could you read the people how they get back if they want to get back to the committee?
For you're talking about for the equity committee?
Yes.
If their term is up? Well, if the term is up, you'll receive information will come from our office that will tell you what your date is. So then that will give you the opportunity to reapply. I don't think that, off the top of my head, pretty much everybody's fairly new, other than you, Peter. But I don't think that your term, I think you were just reelected again.
Ms. Jordan?
If I may interject, Ms. Jordan, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to make that announcement that I will be sending out the letters for reappointment. And on that letter, it will also state how they can go in and reapply. But I do have the names of the ones that will need to be reappointed. So that the ones who are for me for the 2 years, ma'am. The 2 years, yes. That letter will. Okay, thank you.
Deb, I also want to thank you for your work. Do you know which committee, which board member may be coming back to EDAC? Do you know? Have the board decided on that yet?
Did not hear you, Peter.
Sorry. Deb, first of all, I want to thank you for your work. Glad we have worked all together. But you know the next board member, or that's the secret, who is coming to EDAC?
The next board member would be Miss Betsy Vaughn.
Should be the one coming in. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Williams, you had a point for good of the order?
Yes, please. Thank you, sir. The question I have is, we've had a semi-successful remote learning session for the term of COVID, and I was wondering how the performance of that is doing and whether any of our students are still having issues and connection and making sure that the schoolwork is available to them.
So as far as I understand, with schoolwork being available, it's being provided on multiple fronts, electronically via the Google Classroom. In addition to, there are packets being printed for students who need it, along with food being provided in some elementary schools. So any student that does not have internet access, there's also been hotspots that have been provided and additional Chromebooks. So the way I understand it, with proper communication from a parent or family member about lack of internet, lack of access to Chromebooks, lack of access to materials, all those things are being provided in another way.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Any other points for good of the order?
Just one point, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if Ms. Duncan had anything else that she wanted to share. I know a lot of the support's coming from her wonderful Department of Student Services. So to follow up with Mr. Williams' question, I saw Jessica nodding. So you had anything else you wanted to share, Ms. Duncan?
No, I think the information that was shared was accurate. We have done some visits to families that we haven't gotten in touch with, and we've been able to bring some food and hotspots and materials to those families. But there have been multiple opportunities for them to get the work in different ways.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to hear how the Chrome worked in the semester, how the new system worked, how the teachers and the students adapted, and the effects. Maybe, a brief mention of what went on with the COVID within the semester.
Are you asking about how the teachers have transitioned to the new learning style?
Well, we are in a new norm. How did it work out? The semester is over. How did things work out okay? Particularly, I know there are some students without the technology resources. How did it work out all over the board?
So from my understanding, the state made various accommodations statewide for some of the assessments from the grading. And it's the phrase is you work with grace. We all are in different situations and different families are handling it different ways. And so we've been working as a collective unit to make sure all the students are successful from whatever position they're coming from. And so it's just been
what was the testing?
The testing has been suspended for this year. There's been very little testing as far as the standardized test. Some of the AP tests are still being handled online through secure methods. They're still working on some of the IB tests, but most standardized tests as far as elementary school, middle, and high have been suspended for this year. All right, if we don't have any additional points for good of the order.
One more question.
We almost made it. Almost made it.
Do we have a dashboard on the district's website showing how many students have received meals and how many laptops we've distributed and things like that? I think that that would be a really good communication point to the parents and to the community as a whole, understanding how we are supporting students in this time of crisis.
Good idea.
I can tell you there's been approximately 36,000 laptops given out. I do know that.
Ms. Duncan, do we not have that on our, the website, on the update, the COVID-19 updates, where it shows all the how many kids have we fed and all that information? I thought that we did have that.
Updates, I haven't looked on the website, so I'll check to see that if it's there, and if not, actually Adam and I can work together to see if we can get some information added to that so that it's readily available to the public.
Additionally, schools have been sending out updates, depending on what school you attend. Some of the principals have been sending out individual updates from their school about the situation.
And
I was thinking more of a dashboard.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Williams, on your dashboard comment. So the operations just hired a GIS specialist, and ArcGIS, which is the program that they work with. They have a COVID-19 kind of like framework dashboard. It's a little bit above my GIS knowledge, but I'm sure with Ms. Duncan, myself, that would be information that we could create that dashboard. And that, that was something that could be integrated pretty nicely with the grab and go sites, and then also with the community food distribution sites. And that's something we can reach out to her and make available. I think you're right. I think the dashboard the optics of it are great in terms of the numbers that are on there.
All right. If there's no additional comments, is there any motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. John Williams.
Of course, it's Mr. Williams. Is there a second?
Is that Mr. Burns, the second Mr. Burns?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the motion is all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is carried. Once again, I want to say thank you to everyone for your service this year. It's been an honor to work with you. And I hope you have a great, safe summer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stay well.
Everybody stay well.
Thank you, everyone.
You too.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you for having me.
Bye.